Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Tinnitist TV. You know what they say. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing again. But with strings. Okay, nobody really says that. But it does seem to be Basia Bulat's motto when it comes to her latest album. For her sixth release, The Garden, the singer-songwriter reimagined songs from her 5 previous records, incorporating some stunning classical string quartet arrangements by Owen Pallett, Paul Frith, and Robidoux. The gorgeous results work on multiple levels, welcoming new listeners to the fold while allowing longtime fans the opportunity to hear and appreciate these songs in a whole new light. Either way, The Garden serves as a much-deserved celebration of a criminally underappreciated Canadian artist. A few weeks before the album arrived, Bulat zoomed in to chat about her musical garden, her real one, being a new mom, and plenty more. Enjoy.
Awesome.
So, Basia, welcome. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So the first time we talked, which I know you will never remember, and I wouldn't expect you to, was
I'm
about
gonna rack my
12 years
brain.
ago. And you were just 25. Your second album, Heart of My Own, was just coming out. And at that point, one of your big problems still was that nobody could pronounce your name.
Oh, that's never gonna change.
I was going to say, you had a lot of Basias and Basias, and I think you even
Oh yeah.
somebody had put up something that said Basa and Friends like you were a puppet show.
Yes.
Has anybody figured out Basia yet, or
Many people have, and many people never will, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. You can, just as long as I get to keep singing my songs, call me whatever you want.
that's all that matters? So you don't wish you'd maybe
As long as
gone
you
with
call
like,
me.
just you could have gone with Ellen Jones or something. You don't wish you'd come up with one of those?
No, I do love that one. There is that, I forget who came up with this quote originally, but call me whatever you want as long as you call me. I'm happy with that. So yeah, no, I love my name. I love, I could go with the English version of my name, which is Barbara or Barbara Josephine, but I just love honoring my Polish heritage. And that's what my family has always called me. And that's what I've always been called. So I just love being Basia.
Exactly. Well, perfect. And then you've come a long way since then. You're a new mom, right?
I am, well, 9 months actually this week. So new and slightly seasoned. Slightly.
Well, congratulations. I mean, I can see it in your eyes, the new mom, sweet eyes.
Yeah.
So pandemic baby, was this, well, can't tour, might as well have a kid?
It's funny, like this is something I've always wanted to have a kid, and there is never a good time or a bad time to have a kid. It's just like she came when she was supposed to be here. And I don't really question now with anything. If anything these past 2 years have taught me is don't question timing, don't question like how long or when or why or anything. Everything's about to change. Seems like every 5 minutes we have a new reality. So in a way, touring prepared me for that too. The late nights, the sleepless nights, it felt a lot like tour, especially at the beginning, where we've got a whole tiny little headliner. We're the support act. We're just, this time instead of following the headliner on a bus and we're like, opening, we also have to keep the baby, we have to keep the headliner alive. We're dealing with catering. We're dealing with the sound, the lights, for entertainment as well. So there's a lot about it was very relevant.
Clearly, I think you've got a book there for rock star moms and dads.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. I'm actually gonna note that down.
Good. And so also you've got the new album, The Garden, coming up.
Yeah.
And was that I'm kind of thinking, new mom, no time to write songs, might as well re-record some old ones with some orchestration?
Actually, how this came about was I had been performing a lot of these songs previously with symphony groups, philharmonics, like smaller chamber groups, over the years, since the beginning of my career, actually, right when Heart of My Own came out. In between Oh My Darling and Heart of My Own, I did a show with Symphony Nova Scotia, and Owen Pallett did the arrangements for that. And that's kind of where it all began. But of course, those are always very ephemeral in the moment performances. It's very, at the time, especially expensive to record 60 piece orchestra and things like that. And that is what made those performances special, was that they are in the moment and they're one night only. So we had a lot of these arrangements already done, and Owen reduced them to quartets, and some were throughout even for the new record, my friend Paul Frith, who had performed with me across Europe and in the UK for many, many years. He's also an arranger and a composer. So he and my friend Zuzu Robidoux, who is a new, more up and coming composer, worked on the newer material. And really it was, maybe this was going to be an EP. We thought, let's just see if we try and get these down on tape. We never had the time or opportunity to get them down on tape. And so we just thought, let's try them all out and see which ones, maybe even if it's just a single. And then we liked them all. The label liked them all. And so I just kind of want to put them all out. Okay, now we've got ourselves a double record.
Well,
So
great.
yeah. And so it was fun. This was all happening while I was pregnant, actually. So the studio we were in, it's kind of a perfect place. The studio, everything is kind of little ISO booths, which sound kind of funny now, isolation rooms and things like that. But they're quite handy. They're very cozy in a studio. They're not as scary sounding in other ways. So it was a really fun way to kind of forget about the situation around us. Especially Montreal was quite an epicenter and still is in a lot of ways. So it was a way to kind of escape. We each had our own, I had a little room separate from everyone, but with a big, obviously a big window looking in. The string players each had their own little glass booths, and then I had, we had the doors open. So we kind of got lucky the week that we were recording in November that it was warm enough that we just could have the birds singing into the ambiance of the room and hear the traffic. And you can hear that a bit on the recording. So it kind of taking advantage of the moment, and kind of saying thank you to everyone who has supported me over this time and come to all my shows. And right before the world closed down, I was on tour promoting Are You in Love with the string quartet. So it kind of felt a bit faded.
Perfect transition.
Yeah, exactly.
So were these all songs that you had done before in this configuration, or were there some that you had never attempted?
I have to think. We hadn't done, these were all, because all of the songs were already orchestrated for the tour.
Okay.
So we were working with them and promoting Are You in Love with the tour. So it was really more that we just didn't have a chance to ever get them down on tape. Right. And even just the feeling of playing them live, I really wanted to do it on tape so that you kind of have the commitment of, this is the moment. We're not going to spend too much time or we can't edit. I mean, we could if we really wanted to get into splicing tape, but just to have that feeling of a lot of the old records that I love, where you just get that sense of the room. And if the compression's a little too much when the singer's singing and you feel it on the tape a little bit blown out, that's exciting.
Yeah. Do some of them stand out for you in terms of ones that maybe have taken on, a wonderful new life that you didn't hear in the original versions?
Oh yeah, almost all of them, I'd say. That is also really interesting. I've been really, I didn't think about it exactly in the moment how much my awareness of time, just in this moment where time also has had very little meaning, and then also to feel like I'm in this a bit of a time warp just when your whole identity is changing. For me, just becoming a mom, and getting excited about that. Just, I've always felt like my songs have more in them. I don't know, I feel partially responsible for my songs and partially like they're responsible for creating me. So when I'm re-recording, when I was re-recording some of these for the record, it felt like, okay, these songs are telling me now who I am now, not necessarily who I was then. So that was, very, very exciting experience. I think a lot about this impulse, I've seen it in painting. I've seen it in poetry. Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass, where he's comes back and he makes revisions to the same piece over many years. I think about someone like Willie Nelson. I was listening to a lot of Willie Nelson and how he's redoing his own stuff, the same covers, you know, over and over. And I just think there is a very interesting impulse in that, where it's like, okay, we are living in cycles, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. And like, there is something very liberating about that feeling of gardening, of like, okay, this tree is bigger now. These leaves shade over this spot now, and I'm pruning out this spot now.
Well, and you've always had this sort of naturalistic streak in your music, though, too. You know, talking about gardens and pruning. I mean, again, I think 12 years ago you were talking about, you know, how that was always a big facet of your songwriting, and you were, I think, wondering even then if that would ever change. And
wow, that's my
I mean,
saying.
it's expanded, but it's still in there, right? You know.
Yeah, I think there is something that's always gonna be a part of me. And maybe those impulses are the same, the creative impulse and the gardening impulse, because there is this idea of if a tree, you know, if a tree falls in the forest, that's a clearing. If you cut down the tree, well, that becomes a garden. You know, there is something about having a bit of your own hand in things, but you can't control everything. That I'm really interested in terms of both gardening and in music.
What do you grow in your own, like, real actual garden?
Okay, I'm obsessed with roses. So I don't know what I'm gonna do now with my baby girl, because some of these roses, the thorns are insane. They're huge. Some of these varieties. But yeah, I love a lot of these roses. They're just all these different ones. One of my favorites that I've gotten recently is actually named after Oscar Peterson. It's called Oscar Peterson. And it's this beautiful kind of orangey yellow, kind of looks like a sunset rose. It's a Canadian one. But yeah, I just love, when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. And then I saw it was named after, you know, one of the greatest pianists of all time. I thought that's perfect.
Well, somebody out there has to now name a rose after you, right?
Well, hopefully one day, but you have to earn it. I still have some time.
Oh yeah, no, there's no rush. There's no rush. So coming back to the album, you know that people who love your music are going to buy this and listen to it and compare and contrast these versions with the originals. How do you want people to sort of approach this album?
Oh, it's just the same amount of fun that I had making it.
Okay.
I just had so much fun making it, and I think the people who know these songs best, that was kind of also part of my thinking, is that so many times I'm always it like never stops blowing my mind when people say, this is my 7th time seeing you live. People just come back to my shows over and over again. And so I want to bring something different to each tour and to each new record. And it is really fun. I've always tried to play these songs differently with each record or in a different form. And so to be able to do that on a recording and just give it back as a gift feels really good. So I don't want to dictate too much how people should listen to it, except I hope they have fun.
Yeah, you don't think that, I mean, because sometimes you talk to people and they go, okay, here's how you listen to my album. You dim the lights, you put on the headphones, you know.
Oh my goodness. Control freaks. They want
to set the whole experience. You're good. You don't care if they listen to it.
No, you can be free play and do it to, you know, this record is meant to be enjoyed lots of different ways. It can fit into your life however you feel is best.
You're so easy. You're so accommodating.
Well, now that it's done in the studio, maybe less so.
Okay. But it sounds like the recording of it was pretty straightforward too, or was there some back and forth in terms of, you know what, we've done it this way live, but now let's try changing the arrangement, or maybe let's do something else. I mean, is it different hearing it, you know, in that sort of more quiet environment as opposed to, you know, live on stage that made you rethink some of the songs?
No, you know, I really do feel like the making of this record was such a relief for all of us in the moment, that we were just so joyful to be able to play music with other people. We were not actually, it was a very, very like stress-free by comparison to other records kind of process. It just felt like, oh my God, we get to be hearing. It was very emotional at first because it had been quite some time between March of 2020 and November of 2020. So I hadn't been performing with anybody. I hadn't been in a room with hardly anyone else. And I'd say the same for quite a few of the people on the session. So it was very liberating and very just an experience with a lot of gratitude. We just felt like, oh my God, thank God.
Did you guys rehearse remotely first, or did you just go in cold?
Everyone learned their parts on their own, and then we had a few days of rehearsal that were also recorded just for reference, so that we could kind of make notes and things like that before we just did it, and just to get used to playing, because normally with a quartet you're playing in a room close to each other and you're hearing each other, you're not wearing headphones and you're not in a plexiglass box, separate. So that is a whole new experience, especially for the quartet that we had put together, just to be able to listen in a different way.
It must make you interact differently too than it would with the regular band. Do you find you sing differently? Do you find you just approach everything in a new way, or is it just kind of taking the same piece and slotting it in?
I definitely was approaching everything in a new way, but I can't say for sure. There were just so many things that were different. Just in that moment, everything in my life was changing. The whole world was different. The whole session was something, it was like meeting an old friend after a long time, and where you're just picking up where you left off and you're so happy and you don't think too much about it. You're just like, all right, how many coffees can we get in right now?
Gotcha. And I like the sequencing on the album is interesting too, because you kind of group some songs from the albums together here and there. So you have like these little mini suites that kind of take you to different spots in your catalog. Was that intentional, or was that just how it happened to work out?
A bit of both, because like gardening or the artistic process, you have this idea of what you want and you can try to control it, and then it's going to surprise you. So it's definitely a little bit of both.
Well, it worked out well. I mean, and yet I see no flowers behind you.
Well, we're in -20 here in Montreal in January. So currently I can't even push my stroller down the street with this much.
Fair enough.
Much snow.
The other thing about the sequencing is I sort of noticed that Tall Shadow feels a little underrepresented. I'm wondering why that one is sort of, I think there's only one song from that album on this one.
Oh, on the album. Yeah, I actually don't know. I only noticed that at the end, actually. So it wasn't like an intentional thing. I just noticed it at the end, like, oh yeah, whoops. But it wasn't something that we were like, oh, definitely not, or something. It's an album that reached the most people, but somehow, and maybe that's why maybe that's in somewhere intuitively, just knowing, okay, it's definitely not a greatest hits album. It's definitely more of a, here's these songs that are really interesting with the passing of time and a change of perspective, and to be able to flip them kind of upside down in some cases, sonically, tempo wise, arrangement wise. So it's not necessarily that it was like very intentional or anything like that. Maybe because there was the most that had such a big reach. I don't know. It's not really, it wasn't, I guess I have to think about that one more.
And so since then, have you been writing at all?
Oh yeah. Lots of writing.
Okay.
It's one of those like things that is so tough, because it's the time that I have the most ideas, but the smallest amount of time. I have these little windows of nap times that I can try and get them all down. So it really is a fun challenge. A little bit of that always, that's just how life is. The minute that you have, you're gonna grasp it, and then it's gone.
Well, I mean, yeah, and inspiration can be so fleeting anyway, right? That it's you have to grab it while it's there. And so, I mean, do you now have like 50, 30-second songs, or I mean, are you able to go back and pick up the thread?
Oh yeah, lots of, well, and that's just the process is always going to be different with every record. So I've never been the kind of person, I mean, there's always once in a while these songs that come out fully formed, just like that. But it's always work every day, kind of in that same sense of the garden, which is why I loved how it all fit together as a concept, that you have to do a little bit at a time. You can't force this whole fully mature garden to pop out of nowhere. And it takes a lot of care, and you have to talk to the little plants, and you make sure, each one has its own particular set of conditions and its own preferences, and some like this kind of light, from the north, and some of them like to be shaded from the wind. And yeah, that's the thing too. Like, in terms of ideas, like, they need to be cared for differently, individually.
So a lot of singer-songwriters who become parents, their next album is all about being a parent.
Yeah, I don't know if this one will be about being a parent. I can't say for sure yet. I do think that the reason why I have so much flowing through me right now is because every single day I'm watching the growth of a whole person who's going to have her own life and has her own ideas and her own huge feelings right now. And so I don't know if it's necessarily going to be about parenthood, but I guess we'll see. Oh no, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay. I was like, oh shoot, maybe this is cutting out.
Just wasn't sure if you were pausing or
Oh yeah.
So are you a lyricist first, or does the music come to you, or do they kind of come at the same time?
They change places all the time.
Oh really?
For me, yeah. Sometimes it's a melody and sometimes it's lyrics, and they're just dancing and then taking their spot depending on the song. Kind of in that same feeling of just, you can't, I wish I could just say I sit down at the piano and a whole song comes out. And I imagine that's what Dolly Parton does. She just sneezes them out and they're all hits, but I'm working a little hard. I need a little more work.
It's funny you mentioned Dolly Parton, because in all honesty, sometimes with your vibrato, you have a very similar vibrato to her.
Thank you. I love her. I don't know if that's intentional or just osmosis by listening to her all the time, but obviously she's one of my heroes. So as a songwriter and as a singer. Yeah.
And you know what? About as much fun to interview as you are.
Oh, thank you. Wow, amazing. Oh my God.
Just a treat. Yeah.
Oh my God. If I could, I wish I could interview her.
Last time I talked to her, I said something about her hits, and she was, and she started her answer and she went, "Wait, you said my big hits, right?" And you just go, "Really?" She's a hoot.
Oh my God.
But she's also, one of those just pure songwriters, which I think you kind of are too. I mean, I get the sense from what you're saying to me that, sure, the inspiration comes, but then you spend a lot of time kind of working the clay and massaging it into shape.
Yeah, I think even just in terms of how I see Dolly Parton and how she inspires me, just to not take yourself too seriously, but you take your work very, very seriously. And take it seriously, not to take yourself too seriously, just to have fun with it. But her songs, just the range that she has in her songwriting, and when I say she sneezes a song and it's easy, I know how much she's working on her songs. You can tell that she cares so much about the messages that she's putting out into the world, and how she interprets them and who gets to interpret them as well.
Yeah. Do you write every song to completion, or do you have a lot of sort of half-finished orphans floating around all the time?
Oh, there's always, I don't know if I would call them orphans or if they're seedlings. They're
seedlings. There you go. No, it all comes back to the gardening.
They're seedlings. They're seedlings, or they're seeds in a packet that are waiting to kind of be nurtured.
What's the longest sort of gestation time? I mean, have you ever spent, I don't know, finished a song that you started 4 or 5 years earlier?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely.
And is that more satisfying in a way than kind of, a song that comes relatively quickly, over a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever, to have this thing that's sort of just been sitting there in the back of your mind and popping up every now and again for years and years and years, and then you finally find that key that unlocks the door,
I don't know. I don't know which one. I can't choose between which one.
Because it just seemed to me like you finally get to scratch that itch, that you've had forever.
Both are pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
Hard to say okay, this way is better. It's kind of like saying, pizza or pasta. Both are really good.
Fair enough. So early days, I know, but is a new album already kind of starting to take shape in your mind about where you want to go and what you want to do and what you want to say?
I'm definitely letting the universe dictate to me. I think, just as we were talking earlier about this idea of control, I like to have some sense that I'm captain of the ship, but I'm letting the ocean kind of I'm trying to follow the weather. I'm trying to follow the good weather.
Okay. But then how do you know when you've arrived?
You just know.
Okay.
I think I'm getting better at knowing. I
Okay.
think. I mean, sometimes you say you just never know, and that's why you keep making another record. You know,
Well, or is it that
arrive.
thing of art just always being abandoned, right? As they say, you know?
Yeah, some people feel that way, that it's never finished and you just have to. Who was it that said, like, the only thing, there is a really good quote about this, and I can't remember who said it, but I do find it funny that there's no such thing as like finished. There's just like a publishing deadline or you die.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
don't know
Somebody
if
takes it out of your hands. You know, it's basically the album's got to come out, or else you could sit there and remix and remix and remix and remix.
yeah, and it's not necessarily any better, you know.
Yeah.
You might as well just go make an orchestral version of it like a decade later, and you'll be much happier.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
When you are recording, are you pretty much a first couple of takes, you know, kind of person, or can you sit and you know, record the same song 20 times and have it gradually get better?
Oh, I don't know if it can get better at 20 times in. I don't know. That's like a self-punishing method that maybe I thought worked when I was younger.
You've tried that? Yeah.
And I mean, tried is a very generous word. Tried.
Okay.
Imposed upon myself, or I don't
Okay.
know what the word would be. Yeah, I don't know. I think it really depends on the song. It always comes down to that. And like, they're just all so unique. And so it just, there's lots of different, yeah, I don't know, in terms of a take, whether it's a vocal take or a musical take. I really like, in this instance with the strings, we didn't do, you know, 50 takes of a song because it's too physically challenging. The pieces, some of them they're more simple, but some of them are more challenging, that it's just, you could just drive yourself crazy. And so, and the real goal was to have fun and to feel live, as opposed to feel live and alive.
Yeah.
And though it's
I guess also when you've got the string players there, these are some pretty top-notch musicians who can
they're
come
awesome.
in and just do you feel kind of, I just wrote the songs, I'm just a singer-songwriter, you know, next to these people who can just sit down and sight read this stuff and dash it off?
I feel, in terms of my role, I'm always, I had this great conversation with my friend, who's an incredible artist, incredible singer. I don't know if you're familiar with his music. His name's Jeremy Dutcher. Incredible artist. And when he and I were talking about songwriting, he's like, there is a role, you know, of this role of the song carrier. Like, I don't even know if I can take full credit in terms of, oh, these are my songs and I wrote them. I feel more like I'm a receiver, you know, a radio antenna that gets to be the one that gets lucky enough to pick up this or that song. So I'm just always excited by the process. It's one of the places I feel the most free, and I get really excited. So yeah, it's just, and I'm very aware of how special that is to get to be able to carry those songs.
I wanted to ask you about working with Jim James, which you've now done a couple of times, and obviously it was a good experience for you since you went back.
I love Jim.
Yeah, well, he is a great guy, and I'm wondering, in terms of working the two of you together, how you work together and what he brings to the table for you.
Oh, Jim is just such a great human, wonderful person. Really helped me learn how to believe in myself.
Really?
Oh yeah, just, I mean, such a good friend, the funniest person you could ever spend time with in the session. Just so much fun. I just have never laughed more making a record, sometimes singing the saddest song. I've never laughed more. So yeah, and he really knows what it's like behind the microphone, you know, singing in front of the microphone and behind the microphone, far back in the control room. He really understands the whole process, and how he is just, yeah, to be able to record with one of my favorite people, one of my favorite songwriters, who just gets it. And yeah, brings out the best in you. Your friends will bring out the best in you, because your true friends will be honest with you, and they'll cheer you on, and they can see, you know, what is real, and like the importance of being vulnerable, to get to that place. And so he's a great producer and a great friend.
Yeah, and no commitments, but are you thinking of working with him again for the next album?
Oh, I don't know about it. I don't know where, if this border is going to open up. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
things that we just, at the end of the day, I'm sure we're going to work together on something someday, because I just, if I haven't driven him nuts, but
I'm sure you're
but,
fine.
but yeah, he's just, I mean, obviously it's always a dream to work with him. I love working.
Yeah. One of the things I loved about him is when I found out that the drummer in My Morning Jacket, they have been friends since they were like, I don't know, 5 years old or something,
Yeah.
which I thought was just, that's a sign of I don't know, a great relationship and somebody you can get along with. And I mean, you had your brother on drums for what, the first, how many years you were on
Oh
tour?
yeah, very, very long time. I hope we get to record again too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that'd be
Yeah.
great. Maybe you can bring him back for this next one.
You never know. You never know.
And
Yeah.
are you gonna get your daughter at the piano, like as soon as she can sit up and do it, or?
She's already playing piano. She's playing drums. She's singing. She's dancing. She's wiggling.
Wow, this is
Yeah.
one advanced kid you got there.
I know. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble.
Well, either that or you got a new side person.
I know.
You can be like Jeff Tweedy and bring the whole family along.
She will surpass me in every way. She will surpass me in every way.
Wow,
Sure.
that's good. Nice to set the bar really high when they're
She's
young.
way ahead of me already. She's only 9 months old and she's way ahead of me. So
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
I'm inspired by her every day.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I know you've got other people to talk to today, so I will let you go and say thanks so much for your time and thanks so much for the music.
Thank you very much for a great interview and such thoughtful questions. And it's great to see you again. And hopefully, not 12 years.
No, we'll cut it in half. We'll make it 6 years next time.
Perfect.
All right. Have a great
Perfect.
day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.